Good morning. My name is Elise, and my senior thesis is Creating an Illness, Selling a Cure, the Corruption in Modern-Day Psychotherapy. Psalm 133:1 states, "Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity." When God created man, He gave them community in each other. Man does not have to navigate life alone because he has people he can turn to in his joys and trials. While God intended for us to thrive in company, we instead insisted upon doing life on our own. Therefore, mental health has worsened, and with it, forms of help have risen, such as counseling and psychotherapy. Although the term psychotherapy was not officially coined until 1879, informal psychotherapy has been practiced since the times of the ancient Greeks and Egyptians. The belief that one can be healed through words has been a powerful influence throughout history ever since. For the sake of clarity, one term that will be used throughout this presentation needs to be defined: psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is a treatment for mental health conditions or challenges involving a trained therapist to help individuals explore their feelings, behaviors, and thoughts to improve well-being. In this generation, children are trapped in a perpetual state of limitations due to bad uses of psychotherapy and a lack of support. Abigail Shrier, former columnist for the Wall Street Journal, as well as a Yale, Oxford, and Columbia graduate, explores these topics in her novel, Bad Therapy: Why the Kids Aren't Growing Up. A relatable scenario where this can be seen is in the popular television series Monk, which portrays the debilitating cycle of psychotherapy. The sitcom, based on the real-life events of co-creator David Hoberman, can deliver the clear, early warning signs of bad therapy. In the series, Emmy Award-winning actor Tony Shalhoub portrays the private detective Adrian Monk, who suffers from various phobias, mental disorders, and compulsion. The tragic loss of his wife to a car bomb in the beginning of the series amplifies his mental shortcomings. Soon after, Monk is bound to therapy, twice a week, always at the same time, in the same chair, and with the same therapist. He becomes so dependent on his sessions that any disruption or change to their schedule results in him being unable to function and falling into a fit. Monk becomes so dependent on his therapist, Dr. Kroger, that whenever he has a problem, he immediately turns to him for answers. But that is the least disturbing aspect of his time in therapy. Come season 7 of the series, Monk's therapist passes away. When Monk hears of the news, he suffers a huge setback. For weeks, he begins to notice little annoyances that he had not before, but now can no longer bear. For example, Monk's neighbor had practiced piano at the oddest hours for years, and he had never been bothered. But now, at the mere sound of the music, Monk is rattled. Without Dr. Kroger, Monk becomes impulsive and outrageous, and even abruptly buys an entirely new house just to escape the music. Then, when it comes time to search for a new therapist, he goes through multiple sessions until he finally settles down with the new therapist. And he is only content with his new therapist because his practices are almost identical to Dr. Kroger's. Most disturbing of all, when the series reaches its finale, with a whopping 8 seasons, Adrian Monk has actually achieved little mental improvement and still is at a point where he must turn to his therapist for answers to everything. Between 2 different therapists in almost 10 years, Adrian Monk has funneled money into an industry that gave him the promise of quick fixes, but no actual long-term self-regulation. While this is not a real account, David Hoberman did base Adrian Monk's character off of his own life and experiences with OCD and therapy. Through the series, he delivers the clear lessons and warnings about the risks and shortcomings of becoming dependent on a person rather than developing the skills to cope and regulate on their own. According to Abigail Schreier, children's mental states are declining more and more with each generation. The world has turned to methods to fix their kids instead of letting them learn and grow from their mistakes. More and more children are being diagnosed, put in therapy, and coddled. The use of therapy, more specifically psychotherapy, does not always bring a cure, though. In many cases, psychotherapy actually roots more unnecessary harm, such as dependency, anger issues, and anxiety. If in this generation, psychotherapy is causing more harm than help in the lives and mental health of children, why do we continue to glorify and overuse it? The end goal should always be self-regulation, not a life sentence of dependency. Ultimately, psychotherapy should come with a warning label, because desperate parents are regularly falling prey to psychotherapists who recklessly diagnose the vulnerable and insecure so that they can sell a cure. What is one goal parents across the world set for their children? Very often, it is that their kids go on to receive a degree, have a successful career, start a family of their own, but most importantly, that they become independent. While many parents believe that therapy can only help their children's mental health and benefit them socially and emotionally, they cannot be more wrong. In fact, the rising generation has received more therapy than any prior generation. Nearly 40% of the rising generation has received treatment from a mental health professional, compared with just 26% of Gen Xers. With each generation, more and more people are turning to therapy. But according to Abigail Schreier, individual therapy has almost no proven benefit among children. Parent-based approaches are more effective. Parents are in the best position to help their children deal with worries and struggles on an ongoing basis. Parents know their children best and have their best interests at heart. Most of the time, when a child is sent to therapy, it is for something that a parent could have addressed. Once in therapy, children are subject to all sorts of ideas and behaviors that can prove useless and even harmful. One of the biggest harms that can root from unnecessary psychotherapy is a life of dependency between patient and therapist. Too many children grow an unhealthy relationship with their therapist that can reach disturbing heights. Many children allow their therapists to overstep emotional boundaries and become a form of parent because they do not know any better. And how should they? They are just kids. When children are sent to therapy without any true need for it, many are forced to resort to shallow discussions, such as the woes of school or how mom and dad failed to pay enough attention to them. These children talk to their therapists about anything and everything, causing many to grow a sort of parental bond with their therapist. But when children gain a new parental figure, they begin to lose trust, respect, and use for their actual parents. Children then become confused, angry, and resentful towards their parents, possibly destroying their relationship and compromising their mental well-being. Many children even get stuck in an endless cycle with their therapists, where they must turn to them when any inconvenience or struggle arises. Whether their parents are being unfair, their friends are leaving them out, or life is just hard, these children no longer know how to function on their own, causing them to get stuck in a perpetual state of limitations where they must turn to their therapists for answers that they should be able to formulate on their own. Therapy in itself is not inherently evil, but when therapists begin to overstep emotional boundaries and take advantage of unequipped parents and vulnerable children, it becomes a problem. Now, despite public belief, healers can harm. Therapists are human and therefore are fully capable of being corrupted. For many, their patients utilizing them as a permanent crutch is a desirable outcome, purely for the sake of deepening their own pockets. After all, the amount of money a therapist makes is dependent on how many sessions they are booking, and how many sessions they are booking is dependent on how many patients they are maintaining. According to Abigail Schreier, a good therapist doesn't treat therapy with a teen as an annuity. If your therapist doesn't talk to you about termination of psychotherapy during your first session, then they're probably not a good therapist. A good therapist is meant to provide its patients with the tools they need to cope and regulate on their own. But too many therapists use methods to get their patients hooked on therapy, so that they begin to believe they will not be able to function outside the four walls of their sessions. People then begin to believe that outside of therapy, they are lost and have no one who truly understands them or what they are going through. When this takes place, therapists are not only failing their duty, they are also harming the very person they were meant to help. Not only is therapy risky due to the fact that you can become codependent and your therapist might be corrupt, it is also risky due to the fact that in so many cases, therapy just ends up making a mountain out of a molehill. So much of what we're seeing today isn't a mental illness crisis. It's deeply rooted in the values and worldview we've given our children, the ways we've raised them, the influences around them. Most people make the decision to see a therapist when they are seeking guidance for something minor. In those cases, too many people come out with worsened mental health, such as depression, gender dysphoria, crippling anxiety, or their therapist keeps them in sessions by feeding them distortions. Most people seem to believe that counseling and psychiatry are fixed, proven systems with absolute knowledge of how to treat various mental illnesses that are as diagnosable as cancer. This is erroneous, failing to acknowledge that this area of medicine is still experimental. In addition, most fail to acknowledge that the goal in secular counseling is never to get to the root of a problem, but merely to treat the symptoms. But if we only treat symptoms instead of getting to the root of problems, then no matter how many times the symptoms get fixed, they will keep coming back worse and worse each time. Psychotherapists' degrees and immense knowledge scare most people into believing that they automatically know more and their methods are not to be questioned. But before allowing another person to unpack and even feed their children's minds, parents should be heavily researching and meeting with this person first. Rather than being a glorified figure that has everyone's complete trust, parents and patients need to begin questioning the hands they are putting their lives and their children's lives in. What is the role of parents? Parents do not just merely give their children life and then send them on their way to face the world's challenges on their own. Parents should be nurturing their children from birth, loving them unconditionally, providing for them, teaching them, and guiding them through childhood, teenage experiences, and even aspects of adulthood. From the time humans start formulating thoughts, memories, and words, someone is there to teach them and guide them. Each generation has utilized different forms and methods of parenting, but each is in essence the same. Every time the goal is to raise good, kind, stable, and independent people. So why, with each new generation, have parents become more permissive and less present in the lives of the very people they brought into this world? One of the key factors is the mental health industry. The mental health industry has changed nearly every aspect of how new parents raise their children. No more spanking, disciplining, or raising one's voice at their children. These methods, they say, can cause trauma, confusion, anxiety, and can even be considered forms of abuse. New parents have become so scared of messing up their own children that they scrap all traditional forms and methods of parenting and become gentle parents or pushovers. But when children lack assertive parental roles in their lives, they begin to take control and get whatever they want. Then, when parents believe they have failed and their children need to be fixed, they turn to the very mental health professional that messed up the parenting system. Of course, then, children are bound to psychotherapy, where parents hand the reins over to a qualified professional to raise their child properly. Children should not pay the price for therapists who not only fail their duty, but also harm their patients in the process. Now, while evidence does seem to point to the fact that therapy can be harmful, it is also important to consider the arguments against what has been previously stated, because not all therapy is bad therapy. One of the biggest decisions a parent can make in this generation is whether or not to resort to therapy in necessary cases. So it begs the question, when is true therapy necessary? True psychotherapy, also known as talk therapy, is only truly necessary when a person is believed to be at risk of self-harm, or when functioning in day-to-day tasks has become impossible or unbearable. But many people rush to psychotherapy when coping with grief, relationship problems, excessive stress, or when adapting to a new life situation. While psychotherapy can provide patients tools and guidance, general psychotherapy can also just be sessions of ranting and spewing problems without receiving any feedback in return. Many people resort to psychotherapy over minor issues that do not necessarily require professional help. That is when psychotherapy starts to become a risk. Ultimately, a person will decide when they think they need therapy, but that does not make it vital. Psychotherapy should not be a first resort when life gets tough. Parents need to begin truly analyzing their children's mental states before making any big decisions. According to North Boulder Counseling, therapists wouldn't survive as a profession if their methods were not efficient as well as effective. What a silly thing to say. Many people are under the impression that therapists wouldn't be surviving as a profession if their methods were not efficient as well as effective. This is just not true. While many therapists may be good and honorable, that does not mean all therapists are. A medical license does not make a person incapable of corruption. There are countless therapists who are not effective, and yet they maintain patients and make a profit. Why? Because anyone can tell a person what they want to hear, and they will keep coming back for more reassurance. Psychotherapy has been put on a pedestal so high, it can no longer be touched. Our society has been trained to believe that our mental health professionals can do no wrong. This is also untrue. Anything is capable of sustainability as long as people believe it is good and/or works. So to say that therapy must be effective if it is maintaining patients and making a profit is just ignorant as well as false. Energy drinks, vapes, cigarettes, and alcohol are all bad for people and benefit them in no way, and yet they make profit. Why? Because they are addicting and people get quick fixes and pleasure from them. In the same way, while psychotherapy does have some proven benefits, it is also just a source of quick fixes for a lot of people. Money then floods in from confused, lost, angry, and hurting people, and so therapists stay afloat. While psychotherapy does have some proven benefits among children, its risks and consequences outweigh its potential positive influence. In the end, The ultimate goal of any and all therapy should be self-regulation. If it is anything else, then the pursuit is already corrupt. Humans were not made of this world. They were made in the likeness of God, and He has given us everything we need, including our ultimate counselor, the Holy Spirit. John 14:26 states, "But the Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Lord will send in my name, will teach you all things and bring to your remembrance all that I have said." The only true hope, peace, comfort, and fulfillment can be found in God and His love and purpose for us. As St. Augustine said, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts remain restless until they find their rest in you." Thank you. I would now like to take questions from the judges.
One of the criticisms of modern education in America, and by modern I mean 21st century, is essentially the outsourcing of parenting. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about, if the school says, "Hey, we're about to hire a school counselor." It sounds like, based on what you've written, you would have some opinion about that. And by counselor, I don't mean college counselor, I mean psychological counselor.
Yes. I think it's a good thing for schools and churches to provide counseling for their community. I think there's a huge difference between psychotherapy and counseling. Psychotherapy is generally more intense or for bigger struggles, but I think counseling being provided by schools and churches is a good thing because it's a way to keep up with the children, and people at school are the ones seeing the children every day and seeing their struggles. And so I think counseling being offered by a school can be a good thing as long as it is the parent's decision that the children is going to counseling. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Roddy.
First of all, great job. You made it. You did it. And my question is, so say I have a child that I either know or one of my own children who is struggling and they are not able to cope and on a normal basis or function, and they've gotten to that point. What are some key questions you think I should ask a counselor before considering them?
I would definitely ask if they believe that therapy is truly necessary in this case. And I think it's a big thing that the parent should be a part of the journey the whole way through. It shouldn't always just be like the child and the therapist completely separate. The parent needs to stay a part of the equation and up to date on any new things coming in. But I think they need to ask if it's truly necessary at this point. Make sure that the ultimate goal is to grasp tools that will help them outside of therapy so that it does not become a permanent staple in their life.
Elise, you did such a good job.
Thank you.
I think about all the kids that have been walking around, everybody walking around in the area out there saying their papers, and you've been able to say your whole paper since what, December?
February.
Very, very prepared. What made you interested in this? You and I have had a lot of conversations because I too read your primary source and found it fascinating, but what made you interested in doing this particular topic?
I don't quite remember what my topic started out as when I brought it to Miss Barish last year, but I knew I wanted to do something in the field of therapy because I've known for a while that I hope to one day become a children's therapist or a counselor of sorts. And so it felt like a topic that would be very beneficial towards me, not just something I would do in high school and then forget all about it. And then I've also just had loved ones who have gone through counseling or therapy, and I've seen its effect or lack of effect on them. And so kind of all those factors came together, and then when I brought that to Miss Barish, she recommended what became my primary source to me. And after reading that book, that's when I kind of formulated this specific topic.
Well, you talked about gentle parenting. Maybe someday you and I can collaborate. And we can write a book called Thug Out Parenting.
Mr. Davis.
Excellent job, Elise. I really appreciate the topic, and it's a really complex but thoughtful topic, and you did a great job with it.
Thank you.
So recently, in an interview with Joe Rogan, Abigail Schreier made a statement something along the lines of, it's weird that we think that talking about our problems would help us to become happier. And I've been thinking a lot about like gratitude along those lines, but I'm curious if you have anything to say about that statement in particular. Yeah.
No, that definitely sounds like Abigail Schreier after reading her book. One of the biggest points in her book is the idea of rumination, and that children, when going to therapy, and really anyone, it's easy to get trapped in the mindset like you're always talking about yourself and your problems. When you're so focused on those negative things, it can be harder to let go of them, and it can sometimes like amplify the struggle or problem that you're going into therapy with. So I do believe that there is an aspect of it can be harder to work through some things in therapy, but I think there are many cases where therapy proves very beneficial and that it can be necessary.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Second question I have is, growing up, there was a lot more connection with grandparents and with adults, and now it seems like most kids don't have much outside of school and parents. They don't have much connection with other adults, especially grandparents, kind of thing. And it seems like that's a lot of the reason why therapy and counseling have exploded. I just was wondering if you thought anything about that as you were researching your topic.
Yeah, I do think isolation among children is a huge cause for a lot of their problems. And when you're always with yourself, like I said, it's easy to amplify the things you're struggling with or always be thinking about yourself and your own problems. And so that's why I think community is such an important thing. And relationships, thinking about others, doing time and being there for other people, that helps a lot and keeps focus off ourselves. And so many things that have been labeled as mental health diagnoses wouldn't actually need to be and wouldn't be as severe as they seem.
That's great. Thank you.
This is going to feel like a little softball to you, so you're welcome. So you mentioned in your paper, but you say this in your presentation, how you say that being in therapy has almost become a bragging right for some people. Could you just speak a little bit? Why is that? That seems ridiculous.
Preach it.
A lot of people today I feel like when therapy first started out becoming a more regular thing, it wasn't a thing many people were often proud of, like I'm going to therapy. It wasn't really like talked about. But now, in a way, therapy it's just so regular in so many people's lives, and a thing like, oh yes, I'm going to therapy to deal with my problems and all of that. And so many people who wouldn't actually require therapy are going to therapy just because. And so I think many parents who are like, oh, I have created a financial position where I am able to provide therapy for my children to make sure they have the best upbringing, that they don't have any problems, that they can be happy and all this. And so a lot of parents see it as, I can send my child to therapy. I must be a really great parent that I can do this, instead of being the one to spend the time with them and hope that they don't need therapy.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, Elise, doesn't sound like anybody else on the judges panel has a question for you. You have known your paper for months now, and you did this with such ease, and you enjoyed every step of it along the way, and you were encouraged. In the midst of you having to do this, you have 42 classmates, and you were cheering all of them on along the way because you already had yours done, so you were here to help get everybody else over the finish line. So Elise, you did it for everybody else.